They thought they could cut me loose like removing an outdated widget. They didn't know I'd been quietly building an exit strategy, not just for me, but for everyone who was tired of wearing the corporate culture mask. And by the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. I was the update they could never control. My name is Margaret Dawson, but everyone calls me Maggie. At 35, I'd spent 8 years as a cloud infrastructure specialist at North Bay Systems in Austin, Texas. 8 years of my life poured into keeping their digital dreams alive while they collected the credit and the bonuses. I should have seen it coming. The warning signs were there like breadcrumbs leading to a cliff. New management always brings new priorities. And VP Lucas Thorne was the embodiment of everything wrong with modern corporate leadership. He was a LinkedIn guru who spoke in buzzwords and motivational quotes. The kind of executive who'd never written a line of code, but somehow knew exactly how to optimize our human resources. The firing came on a Wednesday. Not in person, not even a phone call. A Zoom meeting at 2 p.m. with Lucas, HR Director Patricia Mills, and some faceless consultant whose name I immediately forgot. The camera squares looked like a tribunal of corporate mediocrity. Maggie, we're restructuring based on strategic budget realignments, Lucas said, his voice carrying that practiced tone of someone who delivered this speech before. Your position is being eliminated effective immediately. I stared at the screen, watching their pixelated faces deliver my professional death sentence. 8 years of midnight server crashes, of training junior developers who'd eventually earn more than me, of being the human firewall between chaos and functionality, reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet. This isn't performance-related, Patricia added quickly, as if that made it better. It's purely a business decision. Business decision, the phrase that absolved them of any human consideration. I wasn't a person being discarded, I was a business decision being optimized. Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks' severance, Lucas continued. Security will escort you out within the hour. Please ensure all company property is returned. That was it. No thank you for the years of service, no acknowledgement of the systems I'd built from scratch, no recognition that I was the one who kept their entire infrastructure from collapsing when they decided to expand to 3 new markets without upgrading their backend. I clicked Leave Meeting and sat in the sudden silence of my home office. The walls were covered with certificates, awards, and photos from company events where I'd smiled and pretended to care about team-building exercises. All of it felt like evidence of a life I'd never actually lived. But here's the thing, they didn't know about me. I don't just break when things get tough, I evolve. For the past 6 months, I'd been having what I called my existential employment crisis. It started small, questioning why I stayed late to fix problems that could have been prevented with better planning. Why I covered for managers who took credit for my solutions. Why I accepted being the invisible backbone of a company that saw me as expendable. During those long nights of philosophical frustration, I'd started building something, not out of revenge or spite, but out of necessity. I called it Safe House Cloud, a lean, transparent, automated infrastructure platform that did everything North Bay claimed to do, but actually did it. Every time Lucas held another all-hands meeting about synergistic optimization while our servers crashed in the background, I'd come home and write more code. Every time I had to explain the same basic concepts to executives who nodded knowingly while understanding nothing, I'd add another feature to Safe House. I wasn't planning to leave. I was planning to be ready when leaving became inevitable. The knock on my door came exactly 57 minutes after the Zoom call ended. 2 security guards who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else stood awkwardly in my doorway, waiting to escort me through the ritual humiliation of the corporate perp walk. Sorry about this, Maggie, said the older guard, whose name tag read, Frank. Nothing personal. I know, Frank. You're just doing your job. The office felt different as I walked through it one last time. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Colleagues I'd worked with for years suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. The air was thick with the kind of uncomfortable silence that follows a public execution. My desk had already been cleared by IT. 8 years of accumulated work life packed into a single cardboard box, a coffee mug with a faded tech conference logo, a small succulent plant that had somehow survived the office's fluorescent wasteland, and a framed photo of my dog, Winston. As I walked past the conference room where they'd held my digital trial, I could see Lucas through the glass, already in another meeting. He was gesturing enthusiastically at a whiteboard covered in the kind of meaningless diagrams that consultants love to draw. He'd moved on. I was already forgotten. But I wasn't bitter. I was liberated. That evening, I sat on my back porch with Winston at my feet and my laptop open to the Safe House repository. 6 months of late-night coding stared back at me, clean, efficient, purposeful. This wasn't just software. It was my declaration of independence from corporate mediocrity. I opened a new terminal window and began typing the commands that would deploy Safehouse Cloud to production. Each line of code was a step away from the world of meaningless meetings and toward something real. The first person I reached out to was Aaron Summers, a security engineer who joined North Bay around the same time I did. Aaron was brilliant, the kind of person who could spot vulnerabilities in code the way most people spot typos. She was also chronically undervalued, passed over for promotions in favor of managers who couldn't distinguish between SSL and SSH. I didn't pitch her anything. I just sent a message. Hey, I'm building something that might interest you. Coffee tomorrow? We met at Epic Coffee on North Loop, our old spot from when we used to escape the office for actual conversations about technology instead of technology solutions. Aaron looked tired. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from fighting the same battles every day. They finally did it, huh? She said, stirring her cortado. We all knew it was coming. You all knew. Come on, Maggie. You were too competent. You made the rest of us look bad just by doing your job well. Plus, you never played the game. She was right. I'd never mastered the art of corporate theater, taking credit for collaborative work, speaking in inspirational nonsense, pretending that obvious solutions were breakthrough innovations. I just solved problems and moved on to the next one. What are you going to do? Aaron asked. I showed her the Safehouse interface on my laptop. Her eyes lit up as she scrolled through the documentation, understanding immediately what she was looking at. This is what we should have been building all along, she said quietly. Want to help me finish it? She closed the laptop and looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years, genuine excitement about work. When do we start? The next contact was Noah Price, a DevOps engineer I'd mentored when he was fresh out of college. Noah was one of those rare people who understood that technology was supposed to make life easier, not more complicated. He'd grown frustrated with North Bay's obsession with buzzword-driven solutions that created more problems than they solved. I found him at a tech meetup downtown, looking bored during a presentation about AI-driven blockchain synergies. When the speaker finished, I walked over. Still believe in software that actually works? I asked. He grinned. Always. You building something real? Already built it. Just need people who remember why we got into this field in the first place. Noah didn't need to see the code to understand. He'd been there for every late-night crisis call, every weekend spent fixing problems that proper planning could have prevented. He knew what good infrastructure looked like because he'd helped me build it at North Bay. I'm in, he said before I even finished explaining. Within 2 weeks, I had a core team of 5 people, all refugees from the corporate software industrial complex. We worked out of my garage like a proper startup. But with one crucial difference, we knew exactly what we were building and why. Safehouse Cloud wasn't just another infrastructure platform. It was a statement: clean code over clever tricks, clear documentation over marketing speak, fair compensation over equity promises, sustainable growth over venture capital theater. We built it the way software should be built, thoughtfully, deliberately, with respect for both the people who would use it and the people who would maintain it. Meanwhile, North Bay was discovering what happens when you fire the person who holds your entire operation together. The first major outage came 3 weeks after my departure, a cascade failure that started with a routine update and ended with 6 hours of downtime for their biggest client. I heard about it through Dylan Ray, a junior developer I'd trained who was still trapped in the corporate maze. He called me at 2 a.m., panicked and exhausted. "Maggie, everything's broken. The deployment pipeline crashed, the monitoring system is down, and nobody knows how to fix it. Lucas is freaking out." I felt a familiar twinge, the instinct to help, to fix, to solve the problem. But that was the old Maggie, the one who confused being needed with being valued. "Have you tried checking the documentation I left?" I asked. "What documentation?" Of course. They'd probably deleted all my notes as soon as I left. Standard procedure for eliminating any trace of departed employees. "Dylan, you're smart, you'll figure it out. And if you don't, maybe it's time to figure out if you want to keep fighting other people's fires." He was quiet for a moment. "Are you hiring?" 2 weeks later, Dylan submitted his resignation. His exit interview was apparently explosive. He'd cataloged every process breakdown, every ignored recommendation, every shortcut that led to the current crisis. Lucas tried to paint him as a disgruntled employee influenced by a toxic former colleague. But the damage was done. Word spread through Austin's tight-knit tech community. North Bay Systems, the company that had positioned itself as a cutting-edge cloud solutions provider, couldn't keep its own systems running. Their stock price began a slow, steady slide, but I wasn't watching their decline. I was too busy building something better. Safehouse Cloud's first client was a small music streaming startup called Resonance. They'd been burned by enterprise software companies that overpromised and underdelivered, so they were skeptical when Noah introduced them to us. "We're not looking for another vendor relationship," said their CTO, Maria Santos, during our first meeting. "We need partners who understand that our success is your success." I showed her our monitoring dashboard, real-time metrics without the corporate spin, transparent pricing without hidden fees, and support from people who actually understood the code they'd written. "This is refreshing," Maria said. "No buzzwords, no sales pitch, just clarity." Resonance became our proof of concept. When their user base tripled overnight after a viral social media moment, our infrastructure scaled smoothly. No emergency calls, no frantic scaling meetings, no prayers to the cloud gods. Just software doing what software should do. Word of mouth in the startup community is powerful. Within a month, we had 3 more clients, all referrals from Maria. Within 3 months, we had 12. Each new client brought the same reaction: relief. Relief at working with people who spoke plainly about technical challenges. Relief at infrastructure that worked as advertised. Relief at finally finding the kind of software company they'd been looking for but couldn't find. As Safehouse grew, more people began reaching out. Former colleagues from North Bay, developers from other companies who'd heard about what we were building, even some of the contractors Lucas had hired to replace me. I was careful about who I brought on. This wasn't about building an empire or maximizing revenue. It was about creating a sustainable way to do meaningful work with people who shared similar values. Jennifer Walsh was a database administrator who'd been ground down by years of explaining why data integrity mattered to managers who only cared about ship dates. She joined us after her previous company ignored her warnings about a security vulnerability that eventually led to a major breach. Marcus Thompson was a front-end developer who'd grown tired of building user interfaces for products that served no real purpose. He wanted to work on software that actually improved people's lives, not just their engagement metrics. Sarah Kim was a product manager who'd been marginalized at her previous company for insisting on user research and sustainable development practices. She brought a customer-focused perspective that helped us build features people actually needed. By month 4, we had a team of 8 and a client base of 20 companies. We were profitable, sustainable, and growing at a pace that felt healthy rather than frantic. The most satisfying moment came when we received our first enterprise inquiry. A mid-sized financial services company had heard about us through their startup partners and wanted to migrate their infrastructure to our platform. "We've been burned too many times by vendors who promise the moon and deliver PowerPoint presentations," said their IT director during our discovery call. "We need infrastructure that works, not infrastructure that looks good in demos." It was everything I'd wanted to hear during my years at North Bay, but never did. 6 months after my unceremonious exit from North Bay, I was sitting in my new office, a converted warehouse space in East Austin that housed our growing team. The walls were covered with whiteboards filled with actual technical diagrams, not the meaningless charts I'd grown accustomed to in corporate conference rooms. Winston had become our unofficial office mascot, wandering between desks and providing emotional support during debugging sessions. The office had a kitchen where people actually cooked lunch together, a library of technical books that people actually read, and meeting rooms that were used for solving problems rather than creating them. That's when the email arrived. Lucas Thorne, VP of Strategic Initiatives at North Bay Systems, reaching out through LinkedIn with a subject line that made me laugh. Exciting opportunity for collaboration. The message was classic Lucas, a word salad of corporate buzzwords that somehow managed to say nothing while taking 5 paragraphs to do it. He wanted to explore synergistic partnerships and leverage our combined expertise for mutual benefit. Translation: North Bay was struggling, and they wanted to either acquire Safehouse or partner with us to fix their problems. I forwarded the message to Erin, who was now our head of security. Her response was immediate. Should I reply with our rate sheet for disaster recovery consulting? But I had a better idea. I crafted a response that was professional, polite, and devastating in its simplicity. No anger, no accusations, just a clear statement of facts. Lucas, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your interest in Safehouse Cloud. However, I should clarify that we're not currently seeking partnerships with companies whose leadership philosophy differs significantly from ours. We believe in treating employees as partners rather than resources, investing in long-term stability rather than short-term optimization, and building software that solves real problems rather than generating compelling slide decks. I wish you the best in your continued strategic initiatives. If you're interested in learning more about sustainable infrastructure practices, I'd recommend starting with the documentation and recommendations I provided during my time at North Bay, which outlined many of the principles we've successfully implemented at Safehouse. Best regards, Margaret Dawson, founder and CEO, Safehouse Cloud. I attached a document I'd been saving for the right moment, a comprehensive analysis of North Bay's infrastructure vulnerabilities that I'd compiled during my final months there. Every ignored recommendation, every shortcut that would eventually cause problems, every warning that had been dismissed as too conservative or unnecessarily complex. It wasn't revenge, it was documentation. Lucas never replied to that email, but I heard through the tech community grapevine that North Bay had hired a consulting firm to assess their technical debt and strategic infrastructure needs. The consulting firm's report apparently read like a point-by-point confirmation of everything I'd tried to tell them. By the end of our first year, Safehouse Cloud had 35 employees and 67 clients. We'd outgrown the warehouse and moved to a proper office building. But we maintained the culture we'd built in those early garage days. Every new hire went through what we called the reality check, a conversation about what it meant to work at a company that valued competence over charisma, sustainability over growth hacking, and honest communication over corporate theater. We offered equity to everyone, but we also paid salaries that people could actually live on. We had unlimited vacation, but we also had a culture that encouraged people to actually take it. We had flexible hours, but we also had clear expectations about deliverables and communication. Most importantly, we had something that had been missing from my corporate life: purpose. Every line of code we wrote, every system we designed, every client we served was building towards something meaningful. We weren't just keeping the lights on, we were proving that software companies could operate differently. Dylan Ray had become one of our senior developers, specializing in the kind of complex systems integration that had been my specialty at North Bay. During his performance review, he said something that stuck with me. "This is the first job where I don't spend my commute mentally preparing for battle," he said. "I actually look forward to coming to work." That's when I knew we'd succeeded. Not because we'd beaten North Bay or proved Lucas wrong, but because we'd created something better. We'd built a company where talented people could do their best work without having to navigate corporate politics or translate their expertise into buzzword-friendly presentations. The tech industry talks a lot about disruption, but real disruption isn't about destroying your competitors. It's about building something so obviously better that people naturally gravitate toward it. Safehouse Cloud wasn't just my escape from corporate mediocrity, it was proof that there was a better way to work, a better way to build software, and a better way to treat the people who make technology possible. 2 years after my firing, I received an invitation to speak at a conference about building sustainable tech companies. The organizer mentioned that they'd heard about our company culture and wanted me to share insights about creating alternatives to traditional corporate structures. As I prepared my presentation, I realized that my journey from discarded employee to successful entrepreneur wasn't really about revenge at all. It was about refusing to accept that corporate dysfunction was inevitable, that talented people had to choose between meaningful work and financial stability, that software companies had to choose between treating employees well and being profitable. The presentation went well. During the Q&A, a young developer asked a question that reminded me of my younger self. How do you know when it's time to stop trying to fix a broken system and start building a new one? I thought about Lucas and his meaningless meetings, about the hours I'd spent trying to explain technical realities to people who preferred comfortable lies, about the energy I'd wasted hoping that things would change if I just worked harder or communicated better. When you find yourself spending more time managing up than building up, I said, when you're translating your work into someone else's language instead of doing the work itself, when you realize that your best ideas are being dismissed not because they're wrong, but because they don't fit the narrative that management wants to hear. The audience nodded in recognition. Every developer, every engineer, every technical person in that room had been there. After the presentation, I was approached by several attendees who were dealing with their own versions of corporate frustration. Some were considering leaving their companies, others were thinking about starting their own ventures, and a few were just trying to survive long enough to figure out their next move. I gave them all the same advice: don't wait for permission to build something better. That evening, I sat in my hotel room and opened my laptop to check on Safehouse's monitoring dashboard. Everything was running smoothly, servers humming along, clients' applications scaling automatically, support tickets resolved quickly by team members who actually understood the systems they were supporting. I thought about the contrast between this quiet satisfaction and the constant anxiety that had defined my final years at North Bay. The difference wasn't just about being in charge or being successful, it was about alignment, working with people who shared my values, solving problems that mattered, building something that would last. My phone buzzed with a text from Aaron. Just closed a deal with that fintech startup from Seattle. They said they chose us because we're the first infrastructure company that didn't try to sell them solutions to problems they don't have. I smiled and typed back, that's what happens when you hire engineers to run an engineering company. The next morning, I flew back to Austin and drove straight to the office. The team was gathered around one of our monitoring displays, celebrating the successful launch of a new client's application. The kind of technical achievement that would have been invisible to management at a traditional company, but was the whole point of what we did. Marcus looked up as I walked in. How did the conference go? Good, I said. I think we might have inspired a few more people to build something better. Any regrets about not going the traditional startup route? Sarah asked. Venture capital, rapid scaling, IPO dreams. I looked around the office, at the whiteboards covered with real technical diagrams, at the team of people who chose to work here because they believed in what we were building, at the monitoring dashboard showing systems that actually worked as advertised. None, I said. This is exactly what I wanted to build. And it was. Not a company designed to maximize shareholder value or generate compelling exit opportunities, but a sustainable business that created value for everyone involved, employees, clients, and the broader tech community. 6 months later, I heard that Lucas Thorne had left North Bay to pursue new opportunities in digital transformation consulting. The press release was full of the usual corporate euphemisms, but the tech community read between the lines. North Bay's infrastructure problems had never been fully resolved. Several major clients had switched to competitors, and the company was struggling to attract and retain technical talent. I felt no satisfaction in their difficulties. If anything, I felt sad for the talented people who were still trapped there, trying to do good work within a system that didn't value their contributions, but I also felt grateful. Getting fired from North Bay was the best thing that ever happened to my career. Even though it didn't feel that way at the time, it forced me to stop trying to fix a system that didn't want to be fixed and start building something better from scratch. Today, Safehouse Cloud employs over 50 people across Austin, Denver, and Portland. We serve clients ranging from early-stage startups to established enterprises, all of whom chose us because they were tired of the traditional software vendor experience. Our employee satisfaction scores are through the roof. Our client retention rate is above 90%, and our revenue growth is steady and sustainable. We've never taken venture capital, never played the growth at all costs game, and never compromised our values to hit arbitrary metrics. More importantly, we've proven that there's a different way to build a technology company. Our success has inspired other entrepreneurs to prioritize sustainability over scalability, people over profits, and long-term value over short-term gains. The tech industry is slowly changing, one company at a time. As people realize that the old models of corporate dysfunction aren't inevitable, they're choices, and we can choose differently. As I write this, I'm sitting in my home office, the same room where I received that devastating Zoom call 3 years ago. Winston is sleeping at my feet, the same position he was in when I first deployed Safehouse Cloud to production. But everything else has changed. The walls are covered with awards from our clients, thank you notes from our employees, and photos from team events where people are genuinely enjoying themselves. My calendar is full of meetings I actually want to attend, with people who respect my expertise and value my input. The best part is that I'm not unique. Across Austin, across the country, across the tech industry, talented people are refusing to accept corporate mediocrity as the price of professional success. They're starting companies, joining startups, and creating alternatives to the traditional corporate model. We're proving that you can build profitable, sustainable businesses while treating people with dignity and respect. That you can create innovative solutions without resorting to buzzword-driven marketing. That you can grow a company without sacrificing the values that made it worth building in the first place. The revolution isn't being televised or funded by venture capitalists. It's happening quietly. One ethical hiring decision at a time. One transparent client relationship at a time. One sustainable business practice at a time. Lucas Thorne and the executives like him represent the old way of doing business, extracting value from talented people while contributing nothing meaningful in return. But their time is ending. The future belongs to people who understand that businesses are built by humans, for humans, and that treating people well isn't just morally right, it's the most effective way to build something that lasts. I never got my revenge on North Bay systems. I got something better. I got free. And in getting free, I helped create a path for others to follow. Every person who leaves a toxic corporate environment to join a company that values their contributions. Every entrepreneur who chooses sustainability over growth hacking. Every manager who treats employees as partners rather than resources. They're all part of the same quiet revolution. The revolution against corporate mediocrity isn't fought with lawsuits or public relations campaigns. It's fought by building better alternatives, one line of code at a time, one respectful conversation at a time, one ethical business decision at a time. They thought they could cut me loose like removing an outdated widget. They were right about one thing. I was outdated for their system. I belonged to a better system, one that didn't exist yet but was waiting to be built. So I built it. And now, every day, I get to wake up and work on something that matters, with people who understand why it matters, for clients who appreciate the value of doing things right. That's not revenge, that's redemption, and it's just the beginning.